Kyrie Irving, not a Phoenix Sun. Kevin Durant might be. We'll talk about it. We're live. Locked on Suns. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 6 seasons, a writer at Suns.com, and the host of the Just Basketball Show. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen. Thank you for joining us live on YouTube. We are on every podcast platform. We are, of course, here on YouTube as well. Hit follow, hit subscribe, get the show in your feed when we go live on days like this, as well as every single Monday through Friday forever. Today's show, guys, brought to you by PrizePicks. First time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com. Promo code Locked On. So, if you are joining us live, you will know that this is the first time we have done that, and for very good reason. Kyrie Irving is a Dallas Maverick. Brendon Dueñas is joining as he does every Monday, although in this case it is a Sunday. We're not going to wait any longer. I'm glad the trade happened before we recorded, Brandon, but I did not expect it to be so soon. Just hit me with your reaction. We'll get into the Suns angles, the Kevin Durant angles, the everything sides of this as we have the rest of the show to do. But when you saw the Woj bomb hit, when you saw the package, when you saw that it was Dallas, what did you think?
Trade season's back. Just getting that Shams notification was great. Obviously a lot of Suns fans kind of were tied to the whole Kyrie thing, whether they wanted him here or we're just kind of following the situation to see if Durant's going to ask out. But, ultimately I'm glad it happened before we recorded. So we didn't spend time talking about Kyrie and that whole situation and have to kind of go back and circle back and talk about it all over again next week. So shout out to the Mavericks for making that happen appropriately. Timing wise for us, I'm sure that was their motivation behind it. But yeah, I think it's a good swing for Dallas. Ultimately, no matter how you feel about Kyrie, I think basketball wise, this raises their ceiling. Is it going to work? I don't think so personally. I think there's a lot of basketball issues that come with having such a ball dominant guy like Luka paired with Kyrie. But it raises their ceiling for sure, without a doubt. And that's something a team that like me personally, I did not think Dallas had a chance at winning a championship this season. With what they had. And now I think they have a chance to win the West just based on pure talent alone. So to me, it's worth a swing, but it could also go the other way and completely blow up in their face. And Luka ends up with Kyrie leaving this summer and then they have nothing and Luka could want out. So there's a lot of risk involved with it, but that's what makes the trade deadline.
I didn't think it would happen this quickly. I didn't think Dallas would be so determined to make a deal. I didn't really think anyone would be determined to make a deal. I kind of felt like the Nets were in kind of a position of weakness here, but I guess when you have that opportunity to just go out and get it done and all it takes, well, I want to talk about the package ultimately, and we can get into whatever the Suns package might have been, Brandon, but I kind of feel of two minds about the package because I think that 2029 unprotected first round pick, which was dealt in addition to Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, and a couple seconds in the deal, I think that's a pretty valuable asset. And so from that standpoint, if they weren't getting the Lakers 2 picks, if it was just 1 pick in Russ or something like along those lines, and the Clippers didn't really have the same type of package to give up such a valuable pick because they're so hamstrung, I can see the Nets liking that. I could see them liking that you're getting Dinwiddie and Dorian Finney-Smith in there with Kevin Durant, which I know we've now said the name. We will get to that. Everybody, do not worry. But that part, I guess, surprised me a little bit, just that Dallas was willing to give up so much and that Brooklyn was willing to not let the market get bigger. Like I was sitting there kind of waiting for a 5th team to jump out. I don't even know if the Suns were a real 4th team, to be honest with you, but I thought there would be a mystery contender all of a sudden for Kyrie's services. That didn't happen. And here it's done really fast. Is it just a matter of that pick being so valuable, you think?
Yeah, I mean, I personally thought he was going to end up on the Lakers, like 100%. It just seemed like one of those fits that everyone was waiting on. So the fact that they're able to get a pretty good haul for him, I think, without using too many other teams as leverage, just speaks to they wanted that deal specifically. And I think two things can be true at once: that it was a good trade for them in terms of value, but also Kevin Durant's not going to want to stick around. And I just don't think that team's a title contender when Dinwiddie's your number two, and it's just. To me, that just seems like a situation he's going to ask out, whether it's at the trade deadline or this offseason. But yeah, I think ultimately, Dallas knew they had to take a swing, and Brooklyn wanted to get something done before the trade deadline. So anytime there's pressure like that for two separate organizations, it's going to come together pretty quick. But I'm just happy he didn't go to Lakers or Clippers, to be honest. I thought those fits were a little bit scarier in terms of the talent they could surround him with. Yeah. Whereas here it seems like, him and Luka could clash. It could work out. You never know. These things, they might have the honeymoon phase where it seems like everything's going great, and then come playoff time, there's that team defensively has a lot of question marks as well. So it's not a perfect fit by any means, but just like I said before, just a swing that I think is worth it for Dallas. And Suns fans, I'm sure want to get to the Durant part, and we will. But it's that dream is now kind of alive again. So that's an interesting part of today after that Chris Haynes tweet.
Yes, Chris Haynes tweeting that the Suns are ready to pursue, I think was the phrase. And Brandon, I'll give you a second. Retweet the link on us going live so we can get some more people in here, because I want to hear some comments as well. But from both standpoints, I think I agree. I think Suns fans who are mad that Dallas is somehow getting better or like some juggernaut now, and like, oh, we hate the Mavs, this is they stole him. Like, I'm seeing that a little bit because I put out a tweet on @LockedOnPHX Suns where you can engage with us as well, asking, just tell me what you think. And I saw a lot of people that were like, Dallas got better, what is James Jones doing? Like, that's not what this is. Like, let's be clear about the risk that this still is for Dallas, despite the fact that, as you said, I think it elevates their ceiling. Okay, but when was the last time a team with Kyrie hit that ceiling for enough time consecutively to go win a championship? It hasn't really happened since he won a championship, which was more than a half decade ago now. Let's get to the Kevin Durant stuff here quickly, Brandon. But I have one more question on the Kyrie stuff before we take a break and get into it. Do you think the Suns were ever a legitimate suitor for Kyrie? Like, do you think the Suns called Sean Marks? Do you think they made an offer? How serious do you feel like that was? Because I was skeptical from the beginning.
Ultimately, I think they were just used as leverage. I do think they probably made a call, because it's, like any general manager that can take a swing to get, make an upgrade basketball wise. Kyrie, you got to see if there's a package out there that you could put together that makes you a better basketball team. So I think they probably reached out, but the whole media push, I think, felt more like leverage. I feel like they're more just kind of, just checking what the asking price was rather than it getting super serious. I don't think Matt Ishbia's first move as an owner would be potentially getting rid of Chris Paul. There's kind of various reports that, you could get him without including CP3, but let's just say, the idea was to get rid of Chris Paul and bring in Kyrie. That's a pretty risky first move for any new owner. So I don't think the Suns were a serious destination. I think it was just more, like I said, just adding another team for leverage, which we've seen in all Arizona sports teams, the Sean Payton thing, the Cardinals uses leverage. It's just kind of the Arizona norm that, that's what we are at this point. But I do think that Kevin Durant,
we don't have to, it's a good day right now where people are excited about Kevin Durant. We don't have to rehash garbage scenarios of the past or other teams that don't have a new owner. I'm turning the page on the Suns, Brandon. Let me separate them from the other tragic Arizona sports history, at least until we see what happens here. But I don't know, because I was also saying on Twitter that I didn't think the Suns were just a leverage thing because so many people had it. So I was skeptical that they would actually do it, but I actually do feel like they had some interest. And I think the two reasons that I kept coming back to the more I mulled it over, one being, again, a lot of reporters had it. This wasn't some random rumor, right? It was like everywhere you looked, those were the four teams, and the Suns were one of them. But also, we know Booker and Kyrie had a relationship, probably still do. And we know that, again, Matt Ishbia, like you just said, would have wanted to make a big swing. Maybe now we can look through that a little bit. And if the Suns got whiff of the fact from the jump, hey, the Clippers, the Mavs, and the Lakers are aggressively pursuing this. We did see somebody again from Brooklyn throw out the, hey, we still don't like DeAndre Ayton thing, right? Then maybe the Suns quickly just moved on to, like, don't delete our phone number from your contacts, please, but call us once you get the first step done. And we'll talk about step 2, which is Kevin Durant, which Brandon and I will talk about ourselves next. First, today's show, guys, brought to you by PrizePicks. Basically, what PrizePicks did is they came in and they rejuvenated the entire daily fantasy deal. I was never a big daily fantasy person. Now I'm hooked on PrizePicks, and I mean that. I really do play it. I really do love it. It's open here. It is operational in the US, and all you really have to do is worry about the PrizePicks player projection. So it's not a league, it's not a pool, it's not an opponent head-to-head, it's none of that. You pick 2 to 6 players if they're going to score more or less than their PrizePicks player projection, and you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. Once again, no competing against other people, just you versus those projections. It is not just basketball. They probably have stuff for the game here in Phoenix next weekend. They probably have whatever you love. College basketball is out there. They have fight sports odds and projections. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less, folks. They offer safe and fast withdrawals. And once again, they are currently operational in over 30 states, including Arizona, as well as Canada. So download the PrizePicks app now. Go to PrizePicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit 100, PrizePicks will give you 100. If you deposit 50, PrizePicks matches that right back into your account. Don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On and sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. All right, Brandon, felt a little bit like deja vu this morning as we see more Nets drama unfolding. And then once again, Chris Haynes hits us with a Haynes bomb of sorts. And we are once again back in the twilight zone of Kevin Durant wanting, potentially, we would assume, still wanting to be a Phoenix Sun, all things considered. And the Suns being prepared to pursue him. Now, that was the way that was worded, very reporter speak. What do you think has to happen for this result to be different than what happened in the summer, which I think we can agree at this point was not a very aggressive pursuit by the Suns, all things considered? What's going to be different this time, or what has to be different this time if they want to get it done?
Plain and simple, Durant has to request a trade, and he has to sit out just like Kyrie did and threaten to not report. I think at this point, Durant's request felt pretty soft this summer. All things considered, it just kind of felt. I mean, Jay Crowder had more of a pool than KD did in his situation, which is hilarious.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think ultimately, it comes down to Kevin Durant saying he wants no part of this team's future at all. Which, at the same time, if that goes public, that does not help Brooklyn at all, and from negotiation standpoint. So, I think for Brooklyn, keeping it internal would be to their benefit, and just we could be hit with a Woj bomb before he even demands a trade. This could be stuff going on behind the scenes just in order for Brooklyn to kind of save face, I feel like, in a way. Because the second Durant demands a trade, his value takes a little bit of a hit, especially if he has a preferred list like he had before with the Suns on it. The Suns can put together a package. They have the assets. They have the picks, expiring contracts, young talent. And a third team's also a huge possibility as well. So now it's just I don't know if it's going to happen this trade deadline, but I think big picture, Durant's not going to stay in Brooklyn past this summer. There's no shot of that virtually, unless something crazy happens out of left field. I just don't see it, and I think the Suns have as good a shot as anyone. And I don't want to get my hopes up again. I'm not going to.
You don't want to be hurt again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is not something I'm saying is going to happen, but if it does, the Suns have to be the front runners at this point.
I think they might be the only runners. I mean, not to say other people wouldn't get involved, but like you just go through the teams. I don't think Toronto's going to get involved again with how their season is gone. I don't think it would make sense. I don't feel like Boston. I don't know how real that ever was. I think Jaylen Brown is like pretty close to being a superstar, untouchable level guy at this point himself. So I don't really think he's going to get traded for anybody. And I'm not going to say that there's not other teams that, like you said, if it's a real sweepstakes again, wouldn't get involved that maybe we haven't been thinking about. Maybe the Warriors made a bigger push again, or it's going to get crazy. But the fact that Kevin Durant has been consistent all along, and that was once again the first team Chris Haynes had, it just tells me that connection is still there. I was always a little bit on the opposite side of it, Brandon, in terms of you heard this from Bill Simmons or Brian Windhorst, all these well-connected people saying how silly the whole thing was because no one was ever going to match what a reasonable asking price for Durant ought to be because he's so good. He's a legend. He's a Hall of Famer already, no matter what he does from here on out. And how are you ever going to piece together a trade for that? I get that. I think the Gobert thing screwed everything up to a degree. But I just kept coming back to, and part of the reason I thought a trade would end up happening last summer, despite everybody saying all that stuff, is yes, he has all that time left on his contract, but everybody knows he's going to leave eventually. And so at a certain point, if you're the Nets, it's like, you just got to take what there is. Now, I'm not saying the goofball offers we heard the Suns reportedly put out there last year of like Ayton, Crowder, and a bunch of picks is going to get the job done. And I want to talk about that part next. But the idea that Brooklyn's just going to keep like turning their nose up and like scoffing at any sort of trade, that feels silly to me. I just think at a certain point you have to accept reality. And I think getting rid of his co-star probably brings you one step closer to doing that.
Oh, 100%. And to go back to your question earlier, that kind of ties into it of what needs to happen. I think the Kyrie is the first domino. Kyrie getting traded is like, obviously the number one thing that I think can move the needle towards Durant kind of expediting this process and saying, trade me before the deadline. I'm not going to report, or just throwing a threat out there. That's something that definitely could happen. And I think it makes sense to monitor and see what Brooklyn's thinking. I know James Jones has been talking to Sean Marks since the summer. And then obviously with the whole Kyrie thing, I think the negotiations were real. I think Phoenix probably reached out, but also at the same time, I wonder if James is doing him a little bit of a favor, saying, I'll help you drive up the Kyrie price a little bit. If we can get back to this KD negotiation, I like
that.
That's just my tinfoil hat there thinking, but and also
it makes more sense than the Suns actually pursuing Kyrie to me. So I'll take it. I'll believe it.
Exactly. And Ishbia's press conference, February 8th, more tinfoil hat talk, maybe that NBA is now going to allow KD in Phoenix with Sarver gone. There's a lot of things behind the scenes that
I don't know if I can follow you that far, but I like it.
But yeah, I think the needle's moved a little bit in terms of with Kyrie getting moved, and now it's just about KD if he really wants out, just demanding the trade and forcing Brooklyn's hand in a sense. That's really how this thing gets done. But like I said, I'm not holding my breath. I think there's still a lot of hurdles that have to be leaped for this to come into fruition. But ultimately, the Suns are in a good spot. They didn't make any dumb trades early on, and this kind of speaks back to what we've been talking about all year long. Just don't waste your assets early. This is why you hold on to your chips, just in case something like this happens. And here we are. Yeah. Very fine line, very thin tightrope walk that James Jones has been traipsing across since basically last trade deadline. And I think if he pulls it off, of course, that's, trades. I mean, when we really thought this was happening last summer, we all talked about it. And the idea of pulling off deals to bring Chris Paul and Kevin Durant in the door in the span of 2.5 years, like it doesn't get much better than that. Long way to go, as you said, before that happens. I see people in the comments talking about whether it's worth it to go all in on KD and what the package would be. So I think let's follow our listeners there. We were going to hit that, of course. So let's do that. What would a package look like? And is that package worth doing versus what it would take to get somebody like Siakam? I've seen somebody said DeMar DeRozan. We'll get into that next. First, today's show, guys, brought to you by Built Bar, the
best tasting protein bar ever, the best combination of healthy and delicious that you'll find. Whether it's a New Year's resolution or you just hit the gym all the time, or you just want to eat healthier, whatever your reason may be, Built Bar can help you get your goals met. What makes these guys so good is they're covered in 100% real chocolate. So every single one, that's the baseline. They come in delicious flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond. They have fruit flavors like strawberry, cherry, orange, if you love that yourself. And they keep it tasting like a candy bar despite those amazing macros. So you're not really going to crack 150 calories with the Built Bar. You're not really going to crack 5 grams of sugar. And you're going to be popped full of 15 to 20 grams of protein on every single bar. We've been telling you about Built.com for years, which is where you get them shipped straight to your door. But now, if you live in Arizona, as well as many places around the country, you can get a Built Bar pack at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. 4-bar boxes at Walmart, like cookies and cream or double chocolate. 13-bar boxes, the deluxe big size brownie batter or churro over at Sam's Club. That's Walmart, Sam's Club, or Built.com. Try a Built Bar today. Promise you'll love it. Okay, Brandon. So I'm seeing people throwing words like everything out. I'm seeing people talk about Mikal Bridges. Somebody's telling me to talk about the moves after KD. They don't have KD yet, Brandon. I don't know if you realize Kevin Durant still plays for the Nets on Sunday afternoon, but I guess we're jumping past that. Just tell me what you think the package would look like. And I think most importantly, is it possible to get Kevin Durant? Because we all talked about this last summer. We don't have to recover all of it. Is it possible to get Kevin Durant without getting rid of Mikal Bridges? I think that's the real question that's going to face the team.
So I think it's a little bit unlikely. Do I think it's impossible? No. I think what would have to happen in that scenario is Cam Johnson, DeAndre, and are obviously gone. And I think a third team would have to be worked in, like maybe a Toronto, and you facilitate where Brooklyn can get more of an NBA ready, young star-ish player and like an OG and Anunoby, something creative like that where they can sell their fans easier than, without including Mikal. But I think ultimately Mikal's most likely going to have to be in this trade. Just being realistic, I think the Suns do everything they can to find a deal without including him. But bare minimum, I think 2 of DeAndre, Mikal, and Cam will be included. There's even a possibility all 3 could be. And with the Suns getting back another rotation player from whether it's Brooklyn or another team, I think. But ultimately, Brooklyn's going to control your draft as well. You're looking at 4 plus firsts plus pick swaps. All
the picks is a given, right?
Yeah,
that's
a starting point.
All the draft capital that you can give up. And I think part of the reason the Suns made so much sense from the jump, right, is like, we can make the jokes about F them picks and all that. That's funny. We know it's kind of how James Jones actually operates. Not sure how much of a joke it actually is, but whatever. Setting that aside, the Suns are in win now mode, right? And like even more than like Minnesota doing that was silly, like in a way, like the Hawks doing that for DeJounte Murray was kind of silly to me. The Suns are right there. They have a top 10 player, and that top 10 player is pretty young, and they have multiple other young role players around that. And so their timeline is pretty long. And so you can feel confident it's kind of like what the Bucks did when they traded for Drew Holiday, right? It's like when you're in that mode, it doesn't matter as much. So that's a given. That's a starting point. I think I have to see what the other teams are going to be, because like I said, I think the teams that are there are going to be different than they were in the offseason. New Orleans would probably be able to outbid the Suns no matter what. And I kind of think that's the team I circle back to when I'm talking about who do the Suns have to outbid? What's the other suitor here? If the Pelicans put a bunch of picks, which they have a lot of extras of on top of their own because of the Holiday trade and the Anthony Davis trade, and Brandon Ingram, for instance, like the Suns can't beat that. There's no way they beat that. Is when you look around the league, who else do you think is going to be in consideration here? Because we can all imagine what the Suns are going to do. It's not going to be a 2-team negotiation if it's Kevin Durant becoming available. So who around the league would you be looking at that might also make a run for KD? Maybe New Orleans is one. Are there others?
Yeah, I think the Pelicans are a good example of something that I kind of want to talk about in terms of like, I think one thing you have to consider is, does Durant want to be there long term also? Because that's important for any trade, any team that's going to sell the house for Durant. You have to feel good about that fit long term. And I'm not saying, I don't know what Kevin thinks personally, but I would say, his preferred list does matter in terms of just business negotiations with just around the league in general, just trying to keep a good reputation with, players and stars, which Brooklyn, for the most part, has done a good job of. But I think the Pelicans, if they put Ingram on the table, is obviously a game changer. You could look at Toronto, who you mentioned earlier. They have a ton of pieces, but by the time they trade those pieces, does that roster make sense around Kevin Durant? I don't think so. One team I would just kind of keep an eye on, and this is just complete, fan fiction, just, no source is here, but just OKC. If they just wanted to bring Durant back to pair with Shea, they have all the picks in the world. They have some young talent they could trade. That would be one team, like dark horse. If KD wants to kind of finish where he started and go back home, that's a team that could outbid anyone draft capital wise. But honestly, looking at contenders this year that would make Durant happy, it's a short list. Like the Miami Heat are obviously going to be interested. I don't think they have enough assets to pull it off. The Clippers always find themselves in these conversations somehow, and I don't see them having enough to outbid the Suns either. So when you start to look at it, it's just there's not a lot of options that make sense both for Brooklyn and Durant. And that list kind of gets narrowed down to a select 4 or 5 teams.
And to your point originally, right, that fact is exactly why, as we've seen time and time again, if you are willing to go the James Harden, Anthony Davis, Kawhi Leonard, Ben Simmons route, you tend to get your way. But that's predicated on, is Kevin Durant going to make it known to the league and to his team and to the Suns, if this is indeed where he wants to end up, that's the case? And is he willing to go all out to make that a reality? He wasn't last year. And on the other side of that, the Suns also weren't willing to go to the ends of the earth with their offer to make it a no-brainer for the Nets. Because I think even with KD being like what you call the soft trade request, which I agree with, I think if the Suns had put McHale, like all 3 of Cam McHale and NDA and all the picks on the table last year, I think KD's probably a Sun. Does that feel like at least we probably would have gotten a lot closer than we did? But I kind of think the Suns rested on their laurels a little bit. As much as I was just saying they maybe were right in the long term to do that, they have to change their mindset now. They can't say, well, KD just wants to come here. It's like, okay, well, great. But if you want him, you got to go get him. He's not going to be served up on a platter to you. And when I see the rumors of what they offered last year, and who knows how serious any of it actually was. I know from tea leaf reading and a little tiny bit of inside information that I ever get, that they want it to be known that they were not that in on KD last year. And that feels like posturing, because why would you not be? And that feels like confidence that, okay, well, he wants to be here. It'll happen eventually. Well, how long are you willing to wait? I guess is the question. And if maybe the other component is another team swooping in and saying, we don't care if he wants to sign here right now, we are going to go get him. Maybe that is what puts the pressure on the Suns. If KD's not going to go scorched earth and make this happen. Why are so many people in the comments talking about Julius Randle? Can people not be happy about Kevin Durant potentially coming to this team? It's like,
did we miss something?
The second star on a 500 team in the East is what's getting everybody's attention. It's a little silly, but what do you think of all that? That the Suns were a little bit too cocky last time, and that they might run into that again if they do take that approach of, well, he wants to be here. No one's going to outbid us. You gotta make it happen. I don't think that's the way to get Brooklyn to pony up and get it done. Yeah,
and I think for the most part, you just got to go back to the fit, right? Like having Devin Booker and Kevin Durant on the same team, you have to really think about that. Like that is probably the top duo in the league instantly. You have 2 when they're healthy, 2 players this season that were in the MVP discussion that carried their teams. And we've seen how the Suns have looked without Booker. We've seen how Brooklyn's looked without Durant. You put those 2 together and you have a chance to win any game you're in. It doesn't matter if you're surrounding them with a bunch of role players. It doesn't matter who's around them. That duo right there is worth giving up all those assets. And to go back to your question with James Jones, kind of getting that reputation of being a little bit stingy with his assets. That's something where, if it comes an ultimatum where Durant's requesting a trade and Phoenix is at the top of his list, you have to forget about, I would say, just throw out the window the notion that, we need to keep this young core together. We need to, make sure we get a good value. At that point, I think all cards are on the deck, and you just gotta make it happen, because Durant and Booker, at the end of the day, they're on the same uniform. You have a chance to win a championship. It's that simple. Right now, with the way the Suns are constructed, I'm not saying they don't, but I think there's a lot of things that would have to go right for them just to win the West. And we've seen how bad they've looked at times with what they have in place. And I think this little win streak has gotten Suns fans back to a point to where they might be reluctant with Mikal's great play of late. And look, I love Mikal Bridges. He's one of my favorite players in the NBA. I wanted the Suns to draft him from day one. But if that's what it takes to get Kevin Durant, you do it, and you don't really think twice about it. Yeah, and not
okay.
I would think twice about it, but that's
but not 3 times.
Exactly.
I'm not thinking 3 times about it. I'm doing it after the second thought. I think so that's interesting.
But let me
summer
explain that real quick. You do everything in your power to make sure he's not in the trade, first and foremost. So you exhaust all options. If that's what the deal breaker is, I think, 10 years, you look back and you're going to regret that, because you have Durant and Booker, you have a chance to win a championship. Suns have 0 championships. I want a championship. It's that simple.
I do think that's, at the end of the day, where most people will come down. And I was not trying to put you on the record as being pro, because we just don't have a lot of the details. We don't have enough to say, well, is this one player worth X? Like we're not that close. Maybe we never will know. The Suns don't like to say anything. So even if they get him, we might never know what all the machinations ended up really being. But I came down last summer and this was before Mikal's breakout this year offensively, that I didn't think it would be worth it. I think I was a little bit cocky from the Suns' perspective that, well, he's only going to want to come here. Like, I fell into that trap. But a really big portion of why I came down on don't give him up was I'm not sure if the team is good enough without him. I think, though, now the extra element that I would add is the West is probably not as good overall as I would have expected this year. It's wide open. I'm not terrified of the Nuggets as a 1 seed, even though I think they would have to be the favorite right now. Memphis is young. They've never really done it. And then everything else is all in the middle, and no one's really separated themselves. The Warriors just lost Curry, and the Lakers and Clippers, who knows, right? So, and all these other teams in the Dallas that just got Kyrie, like, nobody's separated themselves. And so I guess in that case, I don't think the team has to be quite as good as I maybe would have projected at the beginning of the season. And so maybe you can get away with KD, Booker, maybe you keep Chris Paul in that construction, and then whatever's left, right? But I guess I would just worry about that, because what Mikal does would probably be even more valuable on a Kevin Durant, Devin Booker centered team, in terms of just being that glue piece, defend point guard, defend the opposing playmaker, space the floor, attack a closeout. Like, just being a super powered version of what his role has already been would be probably more important for this team than it is right now.
100%.
And then, yeah, I think the other thing, just to get my last thought out as we wrap up here a little bit, and I'll let you answer everything. As much as I can go back and forth, I think your point at the end was right. When you're this close to a championship, you do what it takes to get one. And I just can't help but my deepest thought when I parse through all the layers of it internally is, how many times can you tell Devin Booker no to getting Kevin Durant twice? You know what I mean? Can you look Book in the face as James Jones and say, no, it costs too much, 2 separate times, and keep kicking the can down the road on something that might get you a championship when you were so close once already and haven't been able to cross the finish line. I don't think you can do that. And that's probably where it would end up going if it gets close enough to really get it done.
Yeah, exactly. And I think your point earlier just about how wide open the West is exactly why this is the time to take that swing. If there is a couple of teams at the top that I was just like, in fear of or, dreading facing in the playoffs, then I might think a little bit differently with mine more towards the future. But I think at this point, like I said earlier, you have Book and Durant on the same team. You have a chance to win any series you're in. And that's, if you can keep Mikal with that, I think you're the favorites. If James Jones finds a way to make that happen without including Mikal, that'd be insane. And he should get a statue built outside of the arena. But yeah, I think right now at this point, with how wide open the West is and all the parity in the league, just in general, like even the East, I mean, there's some tough teams in the East, but there's also not that clear-cut favorite. And I think that's what's made this NBA season as wild as it's been, just so up and down and chaotic with all these upsets and blowouts seemingly every night. It's just how wide open the league is. So, go get Durant if you can. Like you said, you can't look Book in the eyes twice and say, we had a chance to get this guy and we didn't. As much as I love Mikal, if that's what it takes, then, I painfully accept, but at the same time, you're adding Kevin Durant. So, I mean, for Suns fans that haven't had a chance to watch what he's been doing this year before his injury, he was playing at an MVP level. And anytime you get a chance to add a talent level of that magnitude, you do it. It's that simple.
There's only 5 guys who have a clear-cut case of being better than Devin Booker in the NBA. Like clear-cut, there's no debate. Mm-hmm. Kevin Durant is one of them. So you're talking about the Suns are already great because they have Booker. You're talking about adding a player better than him who gets you even closer. So I do think that's where it ends up is you probably have to do whatever it takes.
Yeah. And one point I want to add to that just, is the defenses covering Book right now. He is their main focus. He's their primary focus. You add Kevin Durant, I think that elevates Booker's game to a level we haven't even seen yet, just because, who's going to be the top defender guarding Book? It's most likely Durant that's going to be seeing the double teams and still getting that pressure. But I think that opens up a lot for Booker and probably goes the other way too with Durant, just with those two guys being the 1A, 1B, just kind of taking their turns on offense. I think that would just be so awesome to watch. And I truly want to see it happen. I don't know if it's going to. There's still, like we've said many times on the show, there's a lot that has to happen before we get to that point. But if it does go down, it would just be a joy to watch those two.
It would be a joy. And I'll put it this way on Mikal to tie that up. If Mikal ended up in Brooklyn, then Brooklyn would get another fan out of me. Like, I'll root for that guy wherever he goes. I'm not going to hide that. I don't always go the fan route, but I will not lie that I am a very, very big Mikal Bridges fan. Just like you, I was, beating the drum in 2018 when he was on Villanova's dynasty that every NBA team should be trying to get him. When they traded for him on draft night, I was over the moon. I just think he's exactly what you want in a franchise piece, and Brooklyn would be lucky to get him. I'm not going to do the whole soliloquy cry right now. I will do a week of shows saying goodbye to Mikal Bridges if it happens. I said that last summer too. It'll just be like, it'll just be me crying. I'm not even going to fluff it up. It'll just be 30-minute shows for a whole week of me, just tears, ASMR of like blinking out little tears about Mikal leaving. But that'll wrap us up, guys. More to come. This week's going to be crazy. It already has been with this kicked off Kyrie Irving deal. Thank you to everybody joining us in the comments. We had a ton of people. Tell your friends, hit subscribe if you ended up here because it was live and you just didn't know what you ended up on. We do this show every day. Hit follow, hit subscribe, whether you're on podcast or you are joining us on YouTube here today. We're here every single day for you, covering all things Phoenix Suns, and we'll be here probably more than every day this week if things continue to go down. That is Brendon Dueñas. You can read him at Right Side of the Sun. Go make Locked On Mavs. I always say Locked On NBA. They're going to cover this. Go make Locked On Mavs your second listen. Go make Locked On Lakers or Locked On Clippers your second listen here on this Sunday or this Monday, whenever you're catching the show. Get the local take from those sides, as well as the national take over at Locked On NBA. Those shows on all podcast platforms as well. And I'll talk to you all tomorrow, maybe sooner. We don't know. Bye, guys.